It's not a job for us.
All right.
Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Full house.
Good evening. Full house.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. Let's get this thing started.
Yep.
Okay. Roll call of attending members. Scott? Jane? New alternate? It's not an alternate, she's not alternative. I noted that, but it was like, okay. He might be a good alternative, but
You're an alternative to what we've had.
David?
David?
Yeah, Dick.
Kathy Dockery?
Out in the left 40 or right 40, whichever that is.
Bob.
And Jim Wasco is our other alternate. I wish to note, welcome to Jane, it's in the list. But I also want to mention that Jerry Dougherty has informed me that he no longer is going to be an alternate. I didn't get anything formal from him, Kath, but he notified me verbally, so I don't know what's required, but that seems sufficient.
As far as I'm concerned, it does.
Okay, it's so noted in the minutes then, please.
Would it go to the board of select?
Pardon?
Would it go to the select board since they're the ones that appoint?
I'm hoping that by our minutes that the select board would know that we're missing one more alternate. We have added one, but we've lost one, so we still have 3 more openings.
As long as you let Julie know, she'll
Yeah, I'll let her know.
make a note of that and put it on the agenda.
Right behind the housing commission.
Maybe in front of.
Yeah, a lot of that going on right now. All right. Current voting, since
I'm present on Zoom.
Ian, Sarah Kimball, thank you. Make sure we recognize. Sarah's visiting on Zoom, attending on Zoom, and therefore she is a voting member. We have a physical quorum, and according to our rules, she can be a voting member. Therefore, Jim, you are not voting this evening as the most senior alternate.
I'm sad.
But just for a reiteration of the rules, because you were new, welcome.
Thank you.
And we're glad you're here. Is that alternates participate, unlike we've set our own rules for this, and we're allowed to do that. Unlike the RSA that says, well, you were supposed to sit out and be a member of the public if you're not voting, our rules call for any alternate to be a participating member, except they are non-voting. Therefore, your comments, your ability to speak, your ability to share in the conversation are comparable to a full voting member.
Plausible deniability.
Exactly, yeah. And, you can say what you want, but when the vote comes, you don't have to register how you feel. And that works well, I think, and I think it helps us as a group to make sure that all of us are participating and involved in what's going on. Next order of business is public comment, and thank you for being here. We don't usually have public, and so public is wonderful. Do you have any comment that you would like to make for something that's not on the agenda this evening?
No, we're here for the next item, the blasting.
Okay, great. And just, this is not this is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. And because of that, if you have anything you would like to share, please let me know. I will recognize you, and if I feel it's appropriate, we'll continue the conversation. If not, I will shut it down. And it's not to say that you're not important or anything. It's like, I want to make sure we maintain the appropriateness of comments and what it is we're trying to accomplish this evening. If it doesn't exactly fit, I'll maybe, if otherwise, bring it on. And it's important for us to get input from the public. So that's different from, again, how other boards handle things. My intent is to try to get as much opportunity to listen when we can.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So we don't put the rules on every time,
Bill?
Minutes,
Minutes?
yes.
You said it for me.
Oh, but we need to accept the minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, you were
So
going to public comments.
I'm looking for a
Motion, is-
motion, please.
motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
No, I have a clarification on that.
Ooh, clarification. Ooh.
Which I typically do after the second, if there is a clarification need. I know that I have a part-time job and I'm on call typically on Thursday nights, but in reviewing the minutes earlier today, it's got me down as absent, and I certainly remember being part of the conversation about the blasting at the last minute, at the last meeting, which is under the public comments part of.
I apologize, you were late, so when I recorded it, I recorded you as absent, so I will correct that.
Because I couldn't say for sure.
And, usually I check the minutes, but I wasn't here, so I couldn't check whether you were or weren't.
My notes do indicate you were,
Yeah.
because I take the attendance at the beginning. but it
So
can't
you'll make the,
Yeah, I'll make the
amend the,
Yes.
all right, so do I have a motion to approve with the correction then?
I saw a motion.
Second?
Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And I will abstain because I was not here. Even though I looked at the minutes and reviewed them. Oh, okay. All right, I'm sorry we did that out of turn. Next item on the agenda, discussion on blasting requirements in Jackson. I know you guys had some conversation about this last meeting night, which I missed. Before we get into the conversation, I would like to just ask the board generally whether or not we have had other issues. And Bob, I'm looking at you from the Board of Selectmen, and Dick, if you've obviously had selectmen's responsibilities, relative to enforcement of the zoning regulations. Do we have generally any issues with that, or have we had issues with that? Is that something that has been a problem in the past, or is it something that, I mean, and Sarah, you too, chime in, please. There are a lot of things we don't have in our regs. And because we rely on, we're not a home rule state, and we rely significantly on RSAs at the state level for a lot of the information, building codes, and that sort of thing that we use. We have right as a planning board to make adjustments and to be more specific on certain things. I guess my question is, generally, have we had issues with enforcement? Do you have, Kevin, I think we asked to see if Kevin was going to be available tonight.
Yeah.
I guess he's not. But have we had any issues with that? Yes, no?
I remember an issue quite a few years ago, but do our words ask for a permit for blasting?
Mm-hmm.
It would
They
be
do.
part of a site disturbance permit.
Right, and we do have, and we do, and I think as we noted that in prior minutes, that we do have the 4.1.6 does make reference, but it's so brief as to mention the word blasting, and that's it. It doesn't mention anything more than that.
Well, what happened then was the blasters came in and adhered to all the state regulations, but did not accommodate anything to the town as far as notification or neighbor notification. And that's why I asked, I couldn't remember if permitting had been added to the wording for us. And I think that probably came up after that incident. I mean, this was major blasting up on Tyrol,
And how would that happen? Would that happen as part of the permit I mean, there's a permit application and that's,
this went in, before there was even a building permit, but the blasting, happened.
yeah.
And it wasn't even, I don't think anybody was even aware of it until it happened.
Yeah, until after the fact, yeah.
Yeah, when I looked, I couldn't, other than what you already mentioned as a reference, I couldn't find anything else that was specific to blasting in terms of permitting or licensing. I think the assumption was that to do blasting, you sort of have to be licensed by the state and to even acquire the materials to blast. I'm sure that you need to have certain licenses and accreditations. If it's occurring without notice to neighbors, that seems like a reasonable request to add that neighbors in town be notified if blasting is going to occur.
Yeah, just so you don't think that
The
the world's coming apart
erupting.
behind, yeah. Or if you have dogs and you live next door, be useful to know.
I mean, my experience with it is it's sort of a non-event. If it's done properly, you wouldn't know it happened if you're 100 yards away.
Yeah,
But that's only one instance. So.
yeah. Okay. Other comment?
Was Kevin invited to the meeting?
Yes.
He couldn't make it because
Yep.
of something, okay, so that's unfortunate, but I believe there was a conversation with him, and I think it's reflected in the minutes, that there wasn't anything as a code enforcement officer he could do,
Right.
because they hadn't taken out a building permit. But there was a look at the site disturbance ordinance, and I believe that it mentions the need to have a plan in
Mhm.
place,
Yeah.
but it's not, could be a plan in somebody's head.
Yeah.
Could be something that if you ask somebody what their plan is.
Yeah, I have one. It's in my drawer,
verbalize
right?
it,
Yeah.
and so
My dog
it seemed
ate
like that ordinance language could be strengthened
Mhm.
if we
Yeah.
felt like it was necessary, and I think that's what Mr. Benoit
Yes.
had mentioned. He is aware of and has addressed some of these issues in other towns in the past, or could come up with a number of different ordinances that we could look at if we felt a need to remodel ours, and I think that's where it was left.
Right.
Yeah, I was not here for last
Right.
Yeah.
meeting, so I'm not privy to your comments, although I understand the general gist of the fact that you were sharing that, yes, we could do a better job. Would you like to comment further?
Sure, I mean, I won't repeat what I said the last time, but somebody should check with the building official. I mean, he told me that he's got no jurisdiction whatsoever under the existing ordinance until somebody asks or applies for a building permit.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, as a lawyer of 40 years, who was a town solicitor in Rhode Island, doesn't make any sense to me, because the zoning ordinance, you don't have to, in order to have the ordinance apply, file for a permit. So if somebody wanted to build a house, they don't go in for a permit for the house, there is jurisdiction to stop that, as there is jurisdiction under the site ordinance. The ordinance has no teeth to it whatsoever. So,
I agree with that.
there's no application process, there's no enforcement, there's no penalty. It talks about guidelines, which I think makes it hard to enforce anything. And, if the town's position is we got no jurisdiction anyway unless somebody applies for a permit, or if I'm smart enough not to apply for a building permit first, I could blast the top of a mountain off or before subdivision approval. I haven't applied for anything under this interpretation. I can disturb. This is a site disturbance ordinance, so to me, blasting is the biggest site disturbance
That you could
you
have.
kind of had,
Yeah.
but it's for any site disturbance. So if the town has no jurisdiction over site disturbance, unless somebody asks for a permit, to me, it's kind of worthless. And there's no, like I say, there's no application, there's no fine, there's nothing. There is, for example, an ordinance in this town on loud noises, which, by the way, references blasting specifically, but in that ordinance, you have to apply. There's penalties if you don't apply. You can apply for what they call a variance to make a loud noise. I'm sure that didn't happen in this case that anybody applied, but it just shows an example of the type of ordinance that at least has some enforcement mechanism
Right.
or a penalty.
Yeah.
And like I said at the last meeting, you have a firecracker ordinance. So if I got a big firecracker, I can be fine. But if I blast the top of a mountain and I'm smart enough not to pull a building permit first or apply for subdivision approval, nobody could do anything. So I just think the ordinance is essentially worthless the way it's drafted. So I pointed that out. I'm willing to help out. I did do some research. If you go on Google and you put in New Hampshire and blasting, you will pick up ordinances from other towns on blasting, for example. So, other towns do specifically govern that. But even if you added enforcement and so forth, the way this thing's worded in terms of guidelines, it's pretty fuzzy. So.
Yeah, I think the zoning ordinance, its current state is based on likely the need to have regulation as opposed to trying to create regulation. And so there could obviously be holes in it. If, for example, if Scott's saying it's like, this doesn't happen all that often, or it's infrequent, or it happens within an understanding of how things ought to work, which is not sufficient from your perspective, and it's not from mine either. But it's also a frame of how I think, and perhaps you think, which might be different from how the town has considered it previously. So I guess the question really is, but wait, when you did your review, you have more expertise in this certainly than I do. Were there any regs that you saw that stood out as being better than others that you might be able to point us to?
No, I mean, I just glanced at, I didn't do a detailed review of the other towns, but I did see that there were a number of towns that had such a blasting ordinance. again, this is site disturbance. Maybe blasting doesn't occur that often around here, but site disturbance certainly
Yeah.
does. And state law doesn't really protect it. This is a local, this blaster who worked over here, he complied with all the state law. We got notice. They gave us an opportunity to have pictures taken of the cracks in the house and ahead of time and all that other stuff. So he complied with everything, and he's licensed and so forth. It's just that the way the town building inspector interprets it, which was a surprise to me, was he can't do anything unless somebody pulls a permit. Which again, that's not the way the zoning ordinance generally will work, in terms of, you don't have to apply for a permit.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but Bob, would you have a comment on that?
Well, I just make some clarification here. Kevin said he, as a building code enforcement officer, doesn't have any authority over something that doesn't have a building permit pulled. He didn't say the town didn't.
Huh.
So,
How,
and
and,
that's not his place to make that kind
Yeah,
of statement,
no.
that the town does or does not have authority to do something.
and he does perform that role though for the town. He's the building code enforcement, but
That's
he's, but it's only the building code enforcement. He's not a more general, I mean, some towns actually have somebody employed that works to make sure all zoning regulations are enforced, including whether or not somebody puts up one of these restaurants on wheels, for example, and parks it in that's not allowed in our zoning ordinance, but that's not something I think that Kevin would have responsibility. I agree, Kevin would have responsibility, if I understand his role currently, to say, gee, you're sitting there with your, handing out fries or whatever, you don't belong here in town. And I don't even think the police would find their way to that either. Because I don't know how that works. I just don't know how it works.
Well, I don't know if anybody has a copy of 4.1.6 with the ordinance, site disturbance ordinance.
Yeah, we do.
It's not that long.
It's not that long, and it really, it's very.
It might be a good idea just to read it real
Yeah.
quick, so we could refresh ourselves.
You got
of
that?
Just, what is?
You want to read it, or? I can. 4.1.6 is site disturbance, and it is very short. It's got two sections as well, but let's go. And it was last looked at in 2015. Any site disturbance, land development, or activities that alter water courses shall be designed and performed reasonably to prevent increased rate of runoff, soil loss, or erosion from the site or lot. Design guidelines, which may be used by developers, individual landowners, engineers, and other planning site disturbance or land development activities, will be available in the town offices for review and use in designing site work so as to minimize erosion and sedimentation. So we have design guidelines which are available, I guess is what that says, for them to review. All areas of site, and 4.1.6.2 says, all areas of site disturbance and land development still in progress at approach of winter shall be stabilized against erosion and sedimentation prior to November 15th to minimize soil depletion and degradation over winter. So that is, there's not a lot of reference here to that. And there is not much of anything in there that suggests that Kevin would get involved proactively up front on something like that.
Well, I will tell you that he does get involved in some of those things. He was quite involved in a local business that needed some erosion assistance and had complaints from neighbors, but that was only because they pulled a building permit.
Right, yeah. So I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you as well.
It could be an example of where, you know, the ordinance doesn't have the language that we might feel could strengthen that, and then that's the question, do we feel like that needs to be strengthened?
All right.
If so, we could look at some of these other ordinances.
I think when it was written, the idea was that site disturbance encompasses such a huge range of activity that trying to dictate how every bit of site disturbance should be performed just is not reasonable. So the idea was to come at it from the other end and say, you can't cause problems. You can't cause runoff, you can't cause erosion. How you do it, but meet those terms
Yeah.
is fine.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not really up to the town to say how, you know, how you're gonna bulldoze this or how you're gonna do that. It's more important that the problems aren't.
I mean, I would agree that the town shouldn't dictate how, but we should
So maybe.
at least be aware.
Right, so stronger, you know, show us a plan, notify the town, maybe specifically for blasting, notify
Right.
neighbors. That seems reasonable to me.
Why don't we figure out how to state blasting in the ordinance? Add blasting. It's not there.
Yeah.
The
Right,
word's
the word is
there.
not in
And
there.
Yeah,
so
it's not here.
blasting will be by permit.
Yeah, there is a separate site disturbance
Yeah.
guideline that we have, which is a separate document, but it's not within the formal zoning ordinance, yeah.
I think we just
And we could also,
state-
as a state RSA, we can simply reference the state RSA, and say blasting, you know, occur according to.
All right. So I guess the next step, if I'm hearing everybody correctly, would be to review some of the other towns' ordinances and see if there is some language that might be satisfactory for this body to consider and approve and add it to. Does that seem fair?
I don't think we have to come up with too many words if we just say blasting will be by permit.
Yeah. Well, that
Well,
may be all that's required. But
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more important that it take place in a proper manner than that it's permitted. I mean, permitted just lets us know it's happening, it doesn't. So again, I think that there are probably state regulations regarding blasting, referencing those. Again, we're not in a position to come up with how blasting should occur ourselves, so we simply reference the RSA and say.
I agree, we're not blasting experts, and nor should we try to enforce a particular way of doing something. But I think I'm being sensitive to what you're suggesting is that we don't have anything right now. And that if we don't have anything, we can do a better job of being able to be aware of a blasting process and allow whatever that process notification is, that it would enable our code enforcement officer to become involved in the process. Does that make,
Yeah,
is that
totally
a
makes sense.
reasonable approach?
I think that's the best, if we can get Kevin with the muscle behind him to go in and say, well, what's going on here, boys?
Yeah.
Is blasting special?
Well, I don't, see, that's the thing,
If you have a bulldozer and there are power lines around, there's a, you know, potential risk
Yeah.
there.
yeah.
You know, are we singling out blasting?
And that's why I asked the first question. Have we had real issues with code enforcement as a general issue when we have new bills or activities relative to any of this? Because it seems that it's one of many different possibilities that could occur. And again, I don't know where, obviously this one fits in at a kind of higher level of, oh my goodness. But you bring up a good one. It's like, yeah, what about wires dangling over
Or buried.
the site or buried? Yeah. And it's like, a lot of that stuff you assume that, and we do have a law in the state of New Hampshire that requires that before you dig, you must check. That's a state RSA that says that you must do that. I think all you guys who are in the construction business know that. Yeah, I even know that, and I'm not. So there are some things that are stipulated that anybody who's in the business already knows, that they are required to do that. And it may be, from a blasting perspective, it's the same kind of thing. And so then the question is, what do we really need to have in our own home ordinance that will help us?
Well, wouldn't it be reevaluating that whole site disturbance in general,
Well, that's right.
which would incorporate blasting, but it would incorporate, I'm cutting down 1,000 trees on my property, how is that going to affect the erosion of the people down below me?
I'm leading the witness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we have to, it's not just blasting, it's any of these. We need to know, and we have to have teeth, that we have some say in what's going on.
So should we look at it? I mean, blasting's probably a great opportunity to introduce us to the idea of looking at this. But I think we also need to take a look at the whole piece of it and see whether or not we can actually do a better job all around.
Right.
So Kevin can do his job.
Right.
And be able to, because, my experience working with Kevin is that he will do everything possible to do things as well as we can do them.
Mm-hmm.
And if he feels limited in what he's able to accomplish because of something we haven't done, I think we should give him a little bit more opportunity to be able to do his job well, and I think I'm open to that idea.
I think it'd be great if he could attend the next meeting.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
knowing what he needs to do the job.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we can get this done, on the quick bell to go for this coming March.
That's what I was
Town
just gonna
meeting.
ask, 'cause that's a lot of work to do.
It's a lot to do quickly to do it right, I think. But I think that we can work at it and get it done.
Right. Yes, because the timeline's it's short. I mean,
Yeah, we basically have 6 weeks.
Yeah. For us to get it on the docket for the town vote on March, we have 6 weeks to.
They could probably only have one other meeting.
That's correct.
And we only have one other meeting between now and then.
Yeah, I mean, from where we sit, it's more of a town issue, the blasting was done, it's all done.
Mhm.
Hopefully, there won't be a lot of erosion and other things, but there's been no real rain since all of this has happened, so we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, I can pull some blasting ordinances from some other towns, so you could look at those. And then I suspect what happened here back in 2015 is some people, because it's broken into the guidelines, minor disturbances, major disturbances. The blasting, in our case, was clearly a major disturbance. So the minor disturbances, it's sort of light on the guidelines, and the major is a little heavier. But again, they're all guidelines.
Right.
So I think some people were concerned that, do we want to be, if a guy's, evening out his backyard or something, which, is site disturbance, but, we don't want to get involved in that type of thing. So I think you want to focus on what I would call major site disturbances. And I think that, the town and the property owners have a real concern with that, because if you can do, big blasting without anything, and there's no teeth in anything, you can have no review ahead of time as far as erosion and all those other things. Could be a lot of houses down below. Our street runs, right where they blasted, so if the erosion were to cause a problem, you could have a street washing out, things like that. And you're gonna get more and more blasting in this town because of the way people want to pay for the views, they have the means to do it. Years ago, it didn't make economic sense to spend a lot of money to do the blasting. These days, it's a good investment. You know, blast it, they're gonna have a wonderful view, the property's gonna be worth a lot of money. So,
Plus, it's a
I'll
lot
get some ordinances,
fun.
get them to you. And, you know, I think, I agree that it's too quick to do it for, you know, this cycle, but this is something you might wanna pay attention to.
If we could borrow some of your expertise, we'd appreciate it.
All right, I'll pull some things together. But I think, I'm not a big regulation type, heavy regulation guy, so it's just, when I see an ordinance and it's on the books, but you can't even enforce it, you know, that's another thing. But, and I think there was a concern with, you didn't want to be too heavy with the regulation, that's what it was called, guidelines, but I think that makes it almost impossible also
Yeah.
to enforce. But, you know, permitting, you know, that type of thing.
Well, to be fair, if problems occur, we can enforce that.
Yeah.
That is in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, I don't think you can do anything, even if there was
No,
the road washes out,
No, if the road washes out,
well,
the
we can
select
go
board
after,
can
we
take
can go
action.
after the property owner, I suppose, but, you know, that's after the fact, and if that can be avoided with some type of review ahead of time, it's good for everybody.
Yeah, and
Sarah
my,
has-
yeah, my experience,
Sarah has a comment.
Sarah, please, do you have a comment?
Yes, while you all been talking, I have been doing some search on the computer, and there are regulations concerning blasting at the state level, and there's also there's a whole list of licenses that you need to get for using explosives, storing them, selling them, etc., which you have to get through the state police. So yes, there are regulations, but we just don't have anything on the town which could point to some of those regulations.
Yeah.
And also there, as the other gentleman said, there are a number of towns that have blasting regulations ranging from 1 page to 16 pages, which I skimmed through, but in the time that I spent on it, not reading them completely.
So Sarah, have you already come up with the 10 words that will cover the 16 pages?
No.
That is the advantage of being at home on Zoom.
Yes, exactly. All right, so looks like we got some work to do.
Yep.
And I think it's something we can put on our agenda for this coming year. And when we do add something to the zoning ordinance, it does have to go before the town meeting before it becomes effective. I don't know that our level of exposure is high in the near term for any of this, but I agree. I think it would be useful to do a review and broaden it beyond the thing that you have brought up. I think we can leverage that, I think, to do a better job entirely. And I think we can get at the one and also give our code enforcement officer a little bit better support.
Right. And I think if he could be at the next meeting, because part of how this is drafted, you know, I think that he could have a good input as to what the tools that he thinks he needs.
Sarah?
I think in the interim that we could probably have a look at those guidelines and maybe add something in as far as blasting, and that to make sure that if you're going to do blasting that you go by the state regulations, or and get it more specific.
Yeah, you know the protocols better than I do. Are the guidelines actually part of the zoning ordinance, or are they just simply in other words, I hear what you're suggesting, we can modify those, but can we modify those without having approval from
I don't know where the guidelines, who or when they were written.
Yeah, they've been around for a while and they're a separate document. And so I don't really know. I mean, they're just referenced here.
It says design guidelines which may be used by developers, so it doesn't sound like they're really part of the ordinance,
Okay.
I would say. I mean, it's
So,
just a guess, but,
I
I mean,
did.
I kind of agree that we could just insert something about blasting and
all right, we're gonna go for insertion of
Well, blasting is already covered in my view.
Well,
because
it-
is a
it-
site disturbance.
we can say more about it though,
Yeah,
right?
you could.
It's not in the
But if you're
guidelines.
gonna add, you know,
It says
permit,
blasting.
in the
Just one-
guidelines.
Yeah, it has one word, it says blasting. If you look at, and I did a word search on the thing and it said, there it is.
But there's referencing the RSA in the guidelines, I think certainly wouldn't hurt.
right. But if you're gonna add, I mean, somebody could look at, when this ordinance was adopted, were the guidelines also put before the voters?
Yeah, I guess we can-
I doubt it frankly, but if you're gonna put in fines and, you know, permit process and all of that.
That would have to go,
It's a
yeah.
little more than a guideline, that part might need.
We can do something, and I guess what we're suggesting is we could do something between now and a year from March.
Yeah.
We could do something, and be responsive. It just seems silly not to be able to do something in a whole year and a few months. And then, to the extent that we need to put additional teeth behind it, that would have to go before the legislative body. We're good?
You want me to tell Julie that we'll be sending something over to the town office or dropping it off, whatever, okay? We're happy to.
We'll do.
And Bob, if we can ask you to authorize Kevin then to work with us on this?
Kevin responded to the invite. I guess he had something else going on. You said he was invited and wasn't able to.
We never responded to us.
We never heard back from him.
We never heard
It
back.
just,
Probably an oversight. He's pretty good at responding.
Yeah.
So I don't know when you asked him.
I sent it on the weekend.
So you didn't, yeah, give him a call.
Okay.
But
He takes his phone out.
I'm sure he'll say yes anyway, but I guess he's a town employee, so I guess I'm looking for the select board to authorize him to work with us.
He doesn't need my authorization. He's happy to show.
Okay,
Okay.
if he says he can't do it because he's not authorized, we'll come back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have any more input on that?
I'm all set. Thank
You're
you.
good? Do you think what we're considering is reasonable?
No, I think it's reasonable to, you know, take a good look at this and have something on the books that is worth something. It's
Yeah.
just that what you have now, you really can't do anything with it, so.
Yeah, okay. I try to always flip my roles. What would I want if I was sitting where you're sitting? And hopefully we do that.
Good. No, I wanted the town, and this is why we brought it up in the first place, because like I said, it was too late for us, because they had already blasted, but, yeah, I wanted the town to look at this issue, and the town's looking at it, so
All right,
at this point, we're happy.
and thank you. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Did you sign in on the back? Did you guys sign in, please?
Oh,
Before you leave?
We will, on the way.
Or sign out.
All right,
Or sign
I'll
out,
sign
sign
out.
out.
Thank you very much.
Down and farther down under E, it lists blasting as one of the,
Yes, and that I think was something you mentioned in the noise ordinance. It is something that is indicated. But if I'm,
and fines are listed there too.
Right, but only if you're gonna violate the sound.
Noise is after the fact.
Yeah,
We'd like to get in ahead of time.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and also, I think to your point, Scott, is that sometimes a blasting can occur without any sound.
Yeah.
Usually it does, without sound.
It may not, it may satisfy the noise
No, I
ordinance and
understand.
still be
I
a,
understand.
yeah. I don't think blowing up the top of the
Wedding
mountain
bands, on the other
might.
hand.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay for the rest if you like.
We could, but,
but you won't.
that's what we're,
But that's okay.
That's okay.
Enjoy the
I
rest of
follow
your.
all the minutes and everything, so,
Well, thank you.
and the plan, so.
We try, and sometimes we're just trying.
Okay, another, it should be discussed manufactured homes, not manufactured homes, manufactured homes. Is that the next on the agenda?
So, what's behind my request to talk about it is if we're gonna do something about affordable housing in Jackson, construction costs is really probably possibly even a bigger barrier or challenge than acquiring land to build on in the first place. And anything that can be done to lower manufacturing costs will obviously help the effort. Manufactured homes certainly do help do that. And you can have various types of manufactured homes. Some are built almost entirely off-site and simply assembled on-site. Some, you know, a little bit mix between. And certainly manufactured homes today are not the trailer park mobile homes of the 70s. And I think when the ordinance was originally written, there was probably the fear of having that sort of classic trailer park in town that was really the concern. Now I'll read our ordinance, and then I'll read a couple of state definitions. And it kind of requires very close attention.
Sarah, can you hear properly?
Not very well. Can you put the microphone closer to it?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
What section is that, Scott, you're gonna read?
Hmm?
What section out of the zone?
So this is section 11, trailer and manufactured home parks. Thanks, Jim. So the pertinent part is no trailer or manufactured home parks shall be located or maintained within the town of Jackson, in which for purpose thereof shall be deemed to mean a parcel of land where two or more trailers or manufactured homes are parked. So the word I'm calling attention to is the word parked. I don't think parked means part of a park in this context. I think it means driven, rolled to the
That's
location
what it sounds like.
and left there, basically. So the state, and we don't define manufactured homes in our definition section. The state has two definitions. Just pull it up here. So for manufactured homes, manufactured housing means any structure transportable in one or more sections, which in the traveling mode is 8 body feet or more in width and 40 body feet or more in length, or when erected on site is 320 square feet or more. And this is the more pertinent part, and which is built on a permanent chassis designed to be used as a dwelling with or without a permanent foundation when connected to required utilities, etc. Now it then goes on to say that this section shall not include pre-site built housing. And so if I go to the definition of pre-site home, whatever it was, pre-site built housing. Pre-site built housing means any structure designed primarily for residential occupancy which is wholly or in substantial part made, fabricated, formed, or assembled in an off-site manufacturing facility in conformance with the United States blah, blah, blah. Assembly, so standards, local building codes for installation or assembly and installation on the building site. For the purpose of this subdivision, pre-site built housing shall not include manufactured housing as defined in what I read before. I thought the pre-site mentioned foundation, but I don't see it now. So, my opinion is that because of the word parked in our zoning and no definition of our own for manufactured housing, and that the manufactured housing that we're talking about would generally require a foundation. It would not be an optional, nor would it have a chassis built into it. I don't think that our ordinance would prevent construction of a sort of a cluster development, a cluster development with manufactured homes that were on foundations, that required to be on foundations, that did not have a chassis, that were not parked. But I guess I'm asking the board, is that
But I know of 2 homes in Jackson that are
you can have
manufactured.
one per lot of any type.
You're looking to put more than one.
Right, if we wanted to do a development that was 4 or 5, a cluster development that was 4 or 5 homes, tiny homes probably, and conceivably manufactured, manufactured housing so that we're reducing the building costs. I don't think our ordinance prevents that because.
I don't either, but I guess my question is, when you reference cluster housing, how that's different from, one building, one lot kind of thing. It isn't, when we take a look at planned unit developments or condos or whatever, each of those must comply with the requirement for how you put together that particular assemblage of units. Does cluster somehow mess that up, or?
So you're saying that the cluster is essentially a group of lots that,
Yeah.
as long as each one only has one manufactured home?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how reference to a cluster would make it any different than anything else.
I just said a cluster since that's how that we would probably do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
The idea would be, certainly if we have a lot that can only take one unit, we will put that one unit on it. But if we have a lot like, say, Ann Peterson's development that can take 4 or 5 units, I don't know if that's a cluster development or how that, but just if there's an opportunity to have more than one unit, and so that it doesn't cross the multiple manufactured homes ordinance.
Yeah, I wonder where you'd start running into trouble. So, for example, if you're trying to reproduce the Wentworth condos, where you have multiple units, all
Yeah.
townhome attached,
Yeah.
would that be considered to, and say they were manufactured elsewhere and then assembled, would that be, if I follow through the concept of what you're saying we wouldn't allow, would that be not allowed? I would say that we shouldn't allow the condos.
Well, I don't think so. I guess what I'm saying is that what our ordinance doesn't allow is multiple manufactured homes parked
Right.
on a single lot.
And we all agree on that.
Right.
Well,
And what I'm saying is, I'd like to be able to put.
manufactured homes are basically started with the infamous double wide.
Right.
They came in 2 sections, but they put them on a foundation. I don't think trailers come in, they can take the wheels out from under them. They put a skirt around it. There's no foundation.
Right.
But they just hold it in place, with cinder blocks. It's pretty crude. But manufactured is, say, the double wide, brought in, put on a foundation, and, I don't think we're gonna get anywhere trying to, although in a cluster, that's another way of ownership, right? Because in cluster housing, there has to be common land.
But you may have a single owner of all of the units.
Right,
Ann Peterson again.
right, with and
I guess really what I envision is doing, the potential of doing an Ann Peterson type development with manufactured homes. I just want to make sure.
But it's really 2 different issues. The manufactured home, if it's on a foundation, is allowed in this town.
We don't say anything about foundation in our ordinance.
No, I'm saying, but it's done because there are houses that are manufactured
But I'm
houses
talking-
on
right, no,
foundations
but I'm
in this
talking about
town.
multiple units, not a single unit. We specifically say you can have one unit on a lot. That's okay. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be an RV. That's allowed. I'm talking about multiple units on a lot, like, again, Ann Peterson's development.
We should get to the bottom of it because
Because what Jackson was wanting to do is to not allow a quote-unquote
trailer.
mobile home park,
Yeah.
trailer park.
So,
But manufactured is going to become the thing of the future because all the contractors I talk to are having a terrible time getting help. Manufactured is brought in, yeah, you can get a couple of guys that marry it together, or some of the really nice ones are, 2 stories, stylish porches and stuff. I've been in a few and they're pretty nice.
Yeah.
But they are brought in one day. And that's the other kicker. It's gonna happen because there is no labor pool.
What I'm addressing though is that our ordinance says it says multiple manufactured homes are not allowed on a single lot, but then it uses the word parked,
Which would mean it has a chassis.
which would mean it has a chassis, and then if you reference the state definition, because we don't have our own definition,
right,
it would seem to be allowed. It just seems, it's a somewhat convoluted way to find out that it is allowed.
I guess the
Because-
question is whether or not the way we have it worded, we think, I think I hear everybody saying, we think we've got it covered. You say, well, gee, I'm not sure because the way the way it's described, I think it is.
I think at a glance, if you just glance, quickly
But,
just glance at it,
somebody,
you say, "Oh, you can't
somebody
do that."
might be able to
You have to look at the
come up
wording
with
and then look at other
something that
definitions.
fits somewhere between this and that, and still, it might not be what we consider acceptable, but could still qualify. I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand. For example, yeah, we have manufactured housing in town for sure. I pass by one every time I walk by the Sullivan's house. It's a Sears Roebuck house. It came in 3 pieces. It's the one right down from the Tierney's, and it's like, I mean, you look at it and you go, huh? It's not. It's manufactured. When we went to visit them, and they said, yeah, this came in on a trailer, and it's like, huh? It looks like a normal house. By the way, double wides are kind of really late compared to the Sears houses.
Yeah.
Back in
Well, the Sears house is a collector's item now.
yeah, back in Connecticut, we had a development of Sears houses.
Yeah.
These are 1916 time frames where you bought the house online like you might for Amazon these days.
Well, Frank Lloyd Wright, actually, that was what he was really about, was how to build the cheapest homes possible for the masses.
And they would have pre-built parts, and it's great.
So is it a
Towns
definition?
weren't.
But is it a definition that we need to change?
I'm not sure that we need to change anything. That's what I'm asking.
He's asking,
the board.
are we good?
Are we good?
Right, and I think we ought to really look at our language and clean it up, because,
Yeah.
we're not being impacted right now, but it's gonna.
Somebody
happen.
somewhere is gonna potentially.
When was it written?
But see, I look at that 11, when I hear the
It
word
was
park,
amended in 87.
87.
I assume it's got a chassis on it and it can be moved.
Again, this would be a
interpret it
good time
another
for
way.
Kevin to be here,
Yeah.
because he'd be the one that would look into.
Yeah, but even if you took the wheels off and planted it, that would still be a
Right.
parked vehicle.
I just want to
one
know,
without
I just want
wheels.
to know if Kevin's going to allow it or not, basically, because he's the one that if someone were crossing this ordinance in some way, he's the one that
Yeah.
would be looking at that.
But I'm saying that's why I think that's a separate topic of having more than one on a lot. Irregardless of how you're building it. That's a different story, if having,
Well, that's kind of what I asked about why the cluster housing would be different, because a description of a lot is,
It used to be 2 acres.
well, yeah, but the cluster housing allows for more than one building.
Well, I understand that, yes,
and a-
yes. But I said it used to be before
Yeah.
Dan put a place up there. You bought a piece of lot, it was 2 acres.
Yeah.
But if we
Still
want
have
to,
to have- Still have to have, by the soils ordinance minimum, so you have the same regulations, no matter what kind of house you put there in for cluster.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I
So
look
you
at.
can do a manufactured house, we can do it now on a lot, regular lot. So in a cluster development, you are limited to how many building residences you can put in by the size of your lot and what it's, how it meets the soils. So a lot size by soils, section 6.
Yeah.
For our
Yeah.
ordinance.
Uh,
So I would think, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
You could do it, you could do clustered development and have the houses there as long as you've got provisions for all the utilities, et cetera.
And I understand all that, it's more just can they be manufactured homes versus on-site.
And I don't see how that makes a darn big difference.
No, no,
Well, it's just that we have an ordinance that says no multiple manufactured homes, and so it's really just
That
a
are parked.
definition.
That are
around-
parked.
That are parked. Again, it's more that it's not,
So yeah, the question is whether we can clean up our language to be a little bit better.
only if someone like Kevin were to have a different opinion,
Okay.
he were to read it differently.
Yeah, I mean, you brought this up, and I kind of put this through this sieve up here, and it didn't appear that we had a problem.
But the language should reflect current technology.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you say. Well, I think we have. I don't think things have changed in the last. For that particular, I don't think they've changed in the last 120 years.
Yeah.
What has changed is that I guess people can create. I mean, the tiny homes, as a for example.
Sure.
And if you take a look at some of the stuff that goes on there, they're built on chassis. And then people decide to take them off the wheels and plant them.
Yeah.
And I guess then that's the question that you probably have is if that were to occur, would that violate our parking? And I think that's where we're getting to the
It's a further
final
extension
piece of it, yeah.
Because those are delivered on-site, fully constructed.
Right,
They're not assembled on-site, they're just, it's like the mobile home
Yeah.
of yesteryear, that's just rolled up.
right.
well, it's like the gypsy wagon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But I mean, I get, for some reason, I'm on some website.
Right, we don't have a no gypsy wagon in our
That's right.
region, so.
But I get these ads to buy homes, these manufactured homes that are 440 square feet, one bedroom places.
on Amazon, yeah.
You do, I get them.
Well, if you think about it, you could buy a tiny, put up a tiny home, because that's what you can afford to build, or, purchase at the time. And then we have a very liberal, accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and so you could instantly double your home just by putting an ADU on it, as long as you have the, septic and all of that. So it's a good way to, almost like the old farm homes that
Mhm.
started off as,
Yep.
small and a single unit, and then just kind of got built off of.
Yep.
Anyhow.
Should we
Homesteading.
deal with foundation,
Hmm?
with some
I mean, if we
Wording.
wanted to clarify, we could say that, manufactured homes requiring or put onto a foundation.
I think we could clean it up.
Yeah.
And make sure that we have covered in a way that would meet our understanding and avoid any misunderstanding. Because what I'm hearing you say is there's a potential for misunderstanding.
It's just because I had to reference, look at this, kind of think, what do they mean by park? And then, okay, we don't have a definition. Is there a state definition? There's a state definition, but then there's this other state definition, and it's a hard time to tell the two apart. And
The party of the part of the second part that, yeah.
But if we came up with a definition, could that be housekeeping?
That could be housekeeping.
I'm just saying, if we came up with a definition to add to our zoning, could that be considered housekeeping and we don't need to go to a big vote?
I think if we felt that we weren't changing the ordinance, simply clarifying the ordinance,
Yeah.
then Sarah?
Sarah, what do you think? Do you think this is a clarification? Because I don't see where we're really changing anything. I think we're just simply saying that it needs to
Be permanent.
It needs to meet a requirement that we already have in place.
You're saying by adding a definition?
Right.
Well, to say that it needs, a building needs to be attached with a foundation of some form. And I guess then, I don't know, just.
Well, or we
Is
could
there
do
a
the
definition
opposite.
of
Or we could do the
foundation?
opposite. The word in here is called manufactured park. A manufactured homes are parked. We could define that as meaning it's on a chassis and it can be movable.
Sure.
You don't want that.
No. That's
No,
not allowed.
To make sure
We're
that
just
we
defining
prohibit
that very clearly, so anything other than that,
would be okay.
Would be
You say
okay.
Parked, i.e. on a chassis and movable with no
That's correct.
foundation.
right,
That would seem to be a clarification.
that would be just a clarification. That word, that's no sense.
Yeah.
So
All
that
right.
means you can't, it has to be on a
Foundation. But
foundation.
we're not saying that. We're saying it can't be this.
It can't be not on a
It
foundation.
can't not be on the foundation.
Which I've learned from him, we do that a lot in here.
It can't be parked.
Yeah, to define the foundation is one thing, but
Now,
to
where are you
say,
gonna put these places?
Permanent, just say permanent.
That's another problem for another commission.
Yeah, because, there aren't too many lots available in Jackson, and they're really expensive, and by the time you put a septic system and everything else in there, but we do have manufactured places in town, you would never know that they were,
So you never know.
and they're just fine, because they do have all that stuff. But with today's day and age, things are really expensive.
That's why we're talking about manufactured homes.
Well, but they're just
In
like
tiny
anybody
homes.
else's homes, if you ask me. I've seen two of them.
No,
And I know what
there
they
are
look
some
like.
basic ones that are very inexpensive. Unbelievable, a third of the cost of
Yeah, 150,000.
$150,000 to build, to put one in. That's it.
Okay, how many bedrooms are they?
One or two,
One or two.
or one with a lot.
on your $250,000 lot, you'll be all set.
Well, yeah,
Well, the
Yeah,
town-
but building
town-
costs and time. Try to build a home from scratch.
Yeah.
it's
No, I-
much easier.
I appreciate what you're saying, but that's not really a part of what we're trying to discuss right now.
but it needs to be discussed. Because
Not in this format and not now.
There's a lot of unused land in Jackson. There's plenty of potential land to do this type of thing. The amount of land that's in common use that is probably owned by estates that are out of state, it's just parked. The town has land that might be usable. Certainly, a lot of people in Jackson put land into conservation to preserve the rural landscape. I don't see any reason why someone wouldn't put land into conservation of the rural community and therefore allow housing. I think there's plenty of opportunity in Jackson.
Huh, interesting.
I think it's smart to clear up, and I think a lot of the tiny homes I come across that I see are on wheels. So what's the interpretation? And, you know, if we wait until there's an abutter issue when someone wants to develop, and the abutter has their own definition, I think you could end up, you know, with problems that we're talking about that we can kind of foresee tonight and prepare for. And I think it is smart to look at
Yeah.
that ordinance.
I agree with you, and this gets at something which I observed this past bunch of months, where someone parked an RV on a property and lived there all for the last 6 months. Is that something that is acceptable, or we will, you know, they moved, it's moved since, but they were there for 6 months. And I don't see anything in our zoning ordinance that suggests that that's not okay.
Were they on somebody's property that they,
Yeah.
that they knew?
I assume so, yes.
Yes, so what's the problem?
Well,
I mean, they eventually got up and
well,
left and,
but here's the question on that.
okay.
How about if that same property now accepts 15 vehicles?
I don't think that's gonna take place.
Well, no, if you allow for one, don't you allow for 15 people to come in and, for the summer, park there, and
It
then,
could be part of the family coming down and there's not enough bedrooms and they bring their trailer with them.
Well, section 11 would prevent that.
Right.
would it?
Yes, because it says
Yes.
at the end, after the sentence he read, the last part of that sentence was, manufactured homes parked, located on individual lots so long as the lot otherwise meets the minimum lot size requirements and setbacks. So you put in multiple on, they would all have to apply with the setback.
If they're all wheeled and parked, they wouldn't be allowed anyhow. They would have to be on, they would have to be not parked. So I would say on a foundation. I don't see how you can have a home that's not on a chassis, but not on a foundation.
So you're saying that the person who was living there for the last 6 months was doing so legally or illegally?
Legally.
Legally, because it's one.
Just one, because it's just one.
Now, Barb's grandfather put it in our deed that I cannot park an RV on our property. On our deed, it says we cannot put RVs on our property.
There you go.
So
Is there a time limit, like no more than an hour or 2 hours? Or?
it cannot be parked. You cannot live, like I can't put an RV in, like, I couldn't have that situation on our property. He put it in a deed. And that was in 1936. It's been around for that long. It's in the deed.
All right. Have we covered this?
Yeah, I think it's defined.
Any further discussion?
Boy, these short topics that I thought.
You didn't even put one on.
I put yours on.
No, there was also the short-term rental.
Yeah, I didn't put the ZBA decision on.
Okay, yeah. Short-term rentals, we have no applications,
Correct.
but we did have an application that did get reviewed by the ZBA relative to the advertisement and the concern that although they advertised the appropriate number of occupancy, they also advertised that the home had 3 bedrooms when it only had 2 bedrooms that were used to determine the occupancy, and it only has 2 bedrooms on the tax card, and also for the septic system. Apparently, in this case, because all those pieces of data were available in this particular
It's being
property.
discussed again next week.
Pardon?
It's being discussed again next week.
Yeah, he's appealing. He's
The
appealing.
person who
Okay.
didn't like the results of the vote,
Yes.
and they've asked for it.
And were you a member? You were a member. Would you like to at least inform us of perhaps,
Well, you were there too, Scott. I mean, it's exactly as you said. It's, when you read the writing, it reads like it could be 3 bedrooms, although it's only licensed for 2.
right.
And he does put, he says, it's obviated by the fact that he says maximum of 6 people.
One thing that came up at the appeal, or the way it was expressed at the appeal, and repeatedly, was that our short-term rental ordinance requires that a number of occupants be included in an ad according to blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I don't believe our ordinance requires that anything be included in the ad. It only requires that if occupants, or if a number of occupants is expressed in the ad, it can be no more than this.
Right.
And so the argument that was being made was that because we require occupants and we don't require rooms, therefore you can say whatever you want about rooms. My counter argument now is that we don't require anything. We just, we express a formula and then a maximum number of occupants based on that formula, but the formula itself is also based on the number of approved rooms.
Right, but it does say the maximum number of people that the dwelling unit can be advertised.
Can
Then-
be advertised,
can be
not
ad-
shall
He
be advertised.
Can
advertises
be
2
advertised.
bedrooms plus a loft.
Well, he could do that, but he didn't.
I thought he advertised 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, he
Well,
did, and that's what he wants.
He's counting the loft as another bedroom.
Right. But he wants to advertise 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
He claims that, that he only allows 2 or 3 adults. I think it's only 2 adults and, or
4 adults
4
and 2
adults.
children.
No more than 4 adults.
He listed 2 grandparents, 2
Right, and he
parents,
talked about
and 2
grandparents
kids.
and the Storyland crowd and that type of thing.
Yeah.
We did hear a different story from abutters after the meeting. Apparently, according to the abutters, there was a rugby team at the.
Well, it's the grandparents and they're all the rugby team.
Right. And so,
Big kids.
but
But-
I guess what I don't understand is that if he were to advert, and this is according to our attorney, Bob can chime in, certainly because he was there too. If he advertises 3 bedrooms, say the ZBA grants him that appeal or that administrative appeal. If he then goes and advertises 3 bedrooms, the select board can then issue a violation and even pull his occupancy permit because he's advertising more bedrooms than he's approved for. So I don't really understand what the whole point of this is in the first place.
What's the septic?
It's a 2-bedroom.
2 bedrooms.
2 bedroom.
Yeah.
The town tax car is 2 bedrooms, the septic approval is 2 bedrooms.
But he says it's marketed to the 2 grandparents, 2 parents, and 2 kids.
Right. But,
That's been their primary rental. Or that's what they're looking for.
but again, he
But
only
he's-
has 2 bedrooms.
He's listing a
So he's-
loft.
So the
As a
building,
bedroom.
the building isn't appropriate to the septic and the building permit. It's 2 bedrooms, he has a 2-bedroom septic, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I won't assume any intent on his part, but when I look for an Airbnb rental myself, or, Venmo, what's the other one, VRBO, I look for number of bedrooms. Because that's what's important, is how many bedrooms does it have? Does the number of bedrooms suit?
I mean,
Then-
sleeping locations, yes.
Does that suit the party that's renting the place? I don't really look at how many occupants, because the number of occupants that fit in these bedrooms is really up to me,
Yeah.
the person living there for that period of time.
All right, so here's the question.
And so for searches, it greatly, it's a great advantage to the ad and to renting the place to inflate the number of bedrooms wherever possible.
And that was brought up during the hearing, and the other thing too, he said, well, I would never want to rent to more than 6. I would only have 2 in each bedroom. Well, once he's advertising it as 3, our short-term rental ordinance allows him to sleep 8,
Right.
regardless of what he comes to a meeting
Yeah.
and shares.
Yeah.
Number 1. Number 2, he applied for a short-term rental permit in 2020 and wrote at the bottom of the permit, the loft of the property is 24 feet long and has 4 twin beds.
Mhm.
So right there, you do the math, and he's got
8.
8 beds, 8 beds right there. And then the next sentence says, the property has been advertised to Suite 10 because of this room. So all control is out the window
Right.
when that happens. And I was surprised that the vote was split, but it was.
Mhm.
And so the minute that door opens, we have 134 other short-term rental applications that are abiding by this,
Mhm.
that then can turn around and use the same logic because it sets a precedent.
Yep.
We just issued a first violation last week to a short-term rental owner that we found doing the same thing, and he changed his ad, but he now owns a first violation. And so when we see those, we address them because it's in violation of our ordinance. If somebody wants to take the ordinance to court, that's their business. But I
Yep.
think the
Yep.
point that Scott was making earlier was, if you're not using your 2-bedroom approved house with a 2-bedroom septic as a 2-bedroom property, then you are, violating that as well.
Mhm.
You're using it as a 3-bed, so short-term rental regardless.
Aside, yeah.
So I was wondering if he was, gonna exercise his right and to appeal, and he did. I didn't know with Jim, I didn't know it was rescheduled.
Yeah,
for a
it's next
specific
Wednesday.
date. Next Wednesday. And by the way, I put it out here to the group that the zoning board of adjustment is looking for new members. They haven't been able to submit any membership requests. They don't meet that often, but when they do, things like this can be important. So if you know anybody looking to get into community service in the town, it's an excellent opportunity. The only reason that the motion made to approve the appeal didn't pass was because you needed a majority and the vote was split 2-2.
Yeah.
So it came that close to setting a precedent in town that probably would have ended up in court.
Well, he mentioned that in his request for a review, that there were only 4 voting members,
Yeah.
and the end result was 2 and 2.
Mhm.
And he said that shouldn't be possible. There should be an uneven number, so,
Well, there should, but
Yeah.
shoulda, woulda, and
just
shoulda.
telling you what he said.
Yeah,
That's what led to the restructuring of another meeting.
yeah. Unfortunately, no more of us can be on the ZBA because the state limits land use board members for only one member.
Well, Huntley's there too.
But he's not a member of this board.
But he's not a member here of this group. And
Yeah.
in fact, that's one of the reasons Huntley left this group, was so that he could be on the
Yeah.
ZBA. But you can only have one member of the planning board on the ZBA. So none of us can apply,
But
unfortunately.
you all know people.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So,
Yes.
again, right after
Well,
the
I voted
housing commission and
against.
the planning board, then
So, bottom line, and I think this is where you were going, do we need to make any changes?
Well, if he were to succeed in this second appeal, then as Bob said, that would really open the door unless we make a change. Now, to be fair to the members of the ZBA that voted for the appeal, they weren't necessarily agreeing with the actions of this person.
Right, they were looking at the specific language,
looking at it
and so
very,
the
very
question of whether a language could be more instructive, to the point of our earlier conversation, we aren't always entirely instructive in our language, because we try not to include everything. We also don't say that you can advertise a hot tub if you don't have one. It's like, well, that's kind of like common sense. If you only have 2 bedrooms, you can only represent that you have 2 bedrooms. If you don't have a hot tub, you can't include it in your listing.
But I'm confused. How did they not? It's very clear.
Well, no, what it does is it says you can't do this. It doesn't say you can't do that.
It says you can advertise for 2 people per bedroom listed on the town issued building permit.
Yeah, but I have 5 bedrooms.
It's not on the building permit. It's a
Yeah, but it doesn't
violation.
say that we can't do it.
It says right here, it says it must be on the building permit. And on file.
No, for the occupancy. It doesn't say your advertisement can't say whatever it wants to say.
It says the advertisement cannot be published except for listing the bedrooms on the building permit.
Does it say that?
Yes. That's the part I don't understand. I've read this thing after the ZBA. It says
what I
the
thought.
maximum number of people that the dwelling unit can be advertised for in any published listing or other form of marketing shall be 2 people per each bedroom listed on the town issues building permit.
Right, so the argument is that that only comes up with the number of people, but that the number of bedrooms you advertise according to our attorney could be read as not necessarily connected to that restriction. That
But
you can
why
only
isn't the number of bedrooms restricted to the septic?
well, it is,
The building permit is tied to the septic.
right. So again, the irony of all this is if he were to go ahead and advertise 3 bedrooms because he, wins the appeal, the second appeal, then the select board can immediately step in and issue a violation and pull the occupancy permit if they want to go that far.
But don't we say that we allow 8 people to,
We don't say number, it says 2 per bedroom plus 2.
but didn't we used to say 8 people?
No.
We never said 8 people. We never set the maximum. So if you have a 1-bedroom place, it's 4. If you have a 1-bedroom house, the maximum you can sleep is 4.
Okay,
That's what it says.
okay.
But the argument, this gentleman's argument, and the argument again of our attorney, is that we only specify the number of people that can be advertised. We don't specify the number of bedrooms, even though the bedrooms are part of the calculation of the number of
Right.
people.
So adding to this that the advertisements must be equal to what is on the building permit?
You could say no more than, the number of bedrooms shall not be more than what's
Specified on the building
specified on the
Yeah.
building permit. The number of occupants will be no more than 2 times blah, blah, blah.
All right. So if our attorneys can interpret it, or anybody can interpret it, this guy can interpret it that way, if there were the opportunity for this to be litigated, and they reference what we have here, and someone can say that we're wrong, what would we need to do to fix this so that if it eventually finds its way to a court case, that we can say, yeah, we have clarified what our intent is.
Well, I read the application that David just read, item 8 on the conditional use permit for a short-term rental in the meeting, and they felt like it did say building permit, but it didn't specifically say septic.
Right.
And it was, so I think both Scott and I agree that there probably could be some tweaks that could clean this up and make it easy for people to interpret that, but, at the time, and his certificate of occupancy describes this project as a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and underneath that, the occupant load, and this is all certificates of occupancy. Occupant load is determined by the number of bedrooms. And so the occupant load is 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
That's what a certificate of occupancy is.
Yeah, but you're being reasonable.
Well, I really, I think both Scott and I, and we discussed this with the attorney, and it was money well spent to go meet with him, felt like, yes, we could turn around and issue him a violation for operating his home other than it's been permitted for based on his certificate of occupancy, which is no longer a short-term rental issue, but if it comes through approved as a short-term rental,
Just makes it muddier.
yeah, so there's concern.
Is it possible that we can go back to Jason and ask him, can he come up with like the forward fix on this so that it closes the loop, I guess?
Yeah, you want to recap that conversation as you heard it? Or?
Right, I think we're all in agreement, but I think what Bill's asking is just, because we'd be going back to him anyhow to say, is this wording sufficient? Given that we're looking at such a slight tweak, can he just go ahead and give us the wording that would be sufficient to limit the number of bedrooms?
I mean, we worked, when we initially set this process up for the short-term rentals, it was Jason who actually did the underlying work for us, even though we were working with Mr. Maglia. And Peter assigned it to Jason, and Jason actually was at our meeting that we had with the advisement and doing all the underlying stuff. So I think he has a pretty good handle on this, and I would hope that he would be able to advise us, I guess, best way to ensure that we're not creating another set of things that end up showing up in front of the ZBA, because then now we said this, and that can be interpreted as that, and I only reading what it says, and it's like, well, that doesn't, or it violates some other requirement of the RSA.
And I'm happy to come up with a draft that Jason would prefer to work off of something.
I think his role typically is to review language we come up with, so.
That's okay.
All right,
That would be good.
Can we do a subcommittee then, or approve a subcommittee to do that?
Sure. I motion to we have a subcommittee.
I'll second that.
All right, and Scott, you've signed up for one. Who else would like to be a member of that?
I don't think I can be.
You can't be.
No.
You're-
I'll be with you. I'll join this guy.
Great, thanks.
Sarah, would you like to be a part of that, since you are our master at wordsmithing, or not? Yeah, your choice.
I don't see this as being a major issue, it's just a matter of adding a few words. You
Yeah.
would say, if you want to have the number of bedrooms that is listed in the advertisement to be the same as the number of bedrooms in the building permit and the septic permit, you just say so.
Yeah.
I agree. Sometimes simplicity is difficult to arrive at.
No, she's gonna be too busy on the blasting ordinance.
All right. I'll be happy to sign up as a third.
Okay.
One other point that Jason made when we met with him, an answer to my question, and not a definitive point, is that he believes it's probably the case that if we get this lined up for this coming town meeting, that it will then take effect until that town meeting, until we vote
Yes.
it up or down.
Right.
He said that, you remember, Bob, what he said he knew that applied to, but he wasn't absolutely sure about this?
He seemed pretty confident.
Mm-hmm.
If we vote on it here, It's enforceable until town meeting.
Right, but Jason just said that there was something else that he knew that was absolutely the case. He was not
Entirely
100%
sure, yeah,
about
yeah.
this.
So I don't know what you guys are gonna do next week, but.
It's not gonna be enforceable by then.
Well, I mean, I'm not changing my vote, and Huntley's not changing his vote, so.
Done deal. Yeah, I guess my concern is that if he wants to continue to pursue it for whatever reason, that we'd like to be in full support of the select board in making certain that they are not being put in a position of trying to enforce this and feel as if they're still being attacked. That's not the intention of anything we put forward.
I'm surprised they got scheduled so quick, Jim.
It's just a common sense thing.
Well, yeah, but you know,
I mean, the kind of people who
common sense seems to have gone
look
out.
for a three-bedroom.
Common sense isn't
place
common
are different.
anymore.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
but the minute you put 3 bedrooms, it gets a different family
Absolutely.
renting.
It's
Yeah.
all marketing.
All right.
Jim,
So-
what was the date that hearing's been scheduled? for?
It's next Wednesday, the 20th.
20th at 7:30?
Yes, 7:30.
Okay. So we agreed to have and we have a subcommittee to do that. Capital Improvement Program review.
Well, actually, it's really, we agreed at I thought we agreed at the previous meeting that we're done.
Okay, I would like to update that I had a meeting with the school board chair. I sent, as I copied you on the note that I had sent to them back in August, and finally I met with the school board chair. They've been busy trying to figure out what's going on with the high school, and that's really been their focus. And it will actually be on the agenda for Monday's meeting for the first time. And her comment is that she was, other than the formal request that I made back in August, that it hadn't come up previously at a board level. And it's never been on an agenda. So whatever interface that we had or tried to have, and I think maybe it might have been, it was Jerry's, I think, being the interface, it didn't make its way to the board itself.
It didn't make itself to the board because they were so concerned and so consumed with the
Yes.
high school thing. They
Yeah.
can't think of
And
anything
that's
else.
and that's what I'm saying.
And
It,
that's
it,
exact-
did, it did not get there. So
No.
it will finally find its way to a formal agenda item.
That'll be interesting. When's that going to take place?
That's going to be Monday's meeting.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
At least what they would do anything with it, I doubt it, but it's going to at least be mentioned. And so,
It has been mentioned before, but like I said, they're all consumed with what they're doing with the high school, which is taking way too much time, because I've been to these meetings and it's absolutely ridiculous.
It
But anyway,
is.
that's beside the point.
it is beside the point, yes.
I'm about
You
10
are,
inches off the chair. I am so upset with this.
you are
thing going on.
absolutely right. But
Because it's so obviously wrong.
anyway, so we'll set that aside. I just wanted to update that I did actually have a meeting to discuss, and it will find its way. It was her intention to put that on the agenda for next week, Monday. So that's an update, and that's as far as I can go with that.
So there's no material update
No, this is an update for the board for
document.
It's updated, there might be an update in the near
there. Well, this is, and I explained to her, I said, we would like to get this off to the select board and say, here we go. But it is a living document. It's not something that we just, it's not done. it's something that we can amend as we have more information, and it's something that we can continue to work when we have new stuff to consider.
And we address that in here.
Pardon?
We address that
Yeah.
in here, that in the future, we can reevaluate it in the future
Yeah,
time.
so it's like, and so I guess what I'm saying is that we still have a open switch, and maybe we have some, maybe some progress. Anything else for this evening?
Yeah, how do we spend $10,000?
Ah,
It's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. It came to us.
okay,
recently.
new business that's not on the agenda.
Well, Julie, it's not. No, it's been suggested, and I think we've even talked about it in here, is updating our zoning map and having that done. And it's about a $10,000 expense.
Yeah,
So
the way our budgets work, we had 10,000 allocated to us this year. We requested 3, but they had us in for 10 because that was what we had the prior year, and they didn't want to change it, so we didn't change it. It was already in print. Like, okay, we leave it there. We said we wouldn't spend it because we were more focused on making sure the housing commission got funded. And so that was our critical point for funding. That does get at the question that we usually talk about after the town meeting in March, about what our priorities are going to be for 2025. What is it that we're actually going to focus on? I mean, we talked about one thing tonight that we can do a better job on, and that is code enforcement opportunities and things like that. Maybe we can do something there that would help.
What is updating the zoning map?
Well, right now, if you look at the map, we have a like a black magic marker, thick line on Route 16,
Right.
and say, wow, anything within 500 feet of this black line is the commercial district, and everything else is not. And I think it has caused potential issue for us. Our homes that,
Here you go.
yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you can really understand
So
it.
the 10,000 spent.
no, I'm saying
Well, we
it's not going to be
can't-
10,000. We don't know what it's going to cost. We have
But
10,000 in our
what,
budget.
to
We
me,
can't spend the 10,000 this year, and we only have to December to do it. We can't contract somebody to do it between now and
I
then.
guess my question is really, what are we contracting? I mean, I think we would come up with some sort of conceptual map first. This is how we
Right.
want to define it.
And-
And then if there's survey work or something that needs to be done, we would
Right.
farm that out. But
So I don't know.
I'm
I
just
don't know
curious
whether
what
it's,
we're
I don't know,
thinking
it's not relevant to this year's budget at all. It's really relevant to our budgeting process for 2025 as to whether or not we should be asking for any funds at all to work on this particular activity. And I don't even have any idea what it might cost, or if there's any cost at all, if we got a thinner marker than what's there.
they do make
They-
Sharpies now.
And, you know, and all sat down and drew some lines that way.
I guess I asked the question because I think it's worth considering beyond simply clarifying that part of our zoning map. Should we consider redistricting in some fashion or adding new districts?
And that has always been, whenever we talk about this, that has been the thing that puts the kibosh on the conversation. And everybody agrees that we don't want to work on redistricting. At least, we brought it up 3 times now since I've been chair. And each of the 3 times we brought it up previously, the conversation has it gone exactly where you described. And that is that, well, if we're going to do the map, maybe we should consider redistricting. And then everyone says, no, let's not do redistricting because that's too contentious, and no one really wants to address that. And so it's like, it's always reminds me of the conversation that you have about, cleaning up the garage or something. Well, yeah, let's clean up the garage, except that, well, if I do that, I'm gonna, and then.
So
you say,
if
well,
we're
let's not do that.
if we're hiring a consultant, would that be more palatable? If they're gonna come up with a suggestion of what might work, rather than us trying to.
And again, it's up to this board to decide what we should want to do. And I think we should probably get a better map than what we have,
Yes.
regardless of whether we
Yeah, I
redistrict or
agree.
not, I guess. And to put the one as a requirement of the other might be, how about we do the one first? And then as we're looking at that, start thinking about whether or not it would potentially lead to thoughts of additional redistricting. And we could make it part of the conversation.
I just was thinking if we're hiring someone for
Yeah.
10,000, there's sort of an opportunity there to.
I don't know, my simple brain is thinking finer marker. And see if we can get away with that to start. And then if it stimulates more conversation, yeah, exactly. And if it stimulates more conversation and we want to get to the other, then let's make that an agenda item for us for a year and plan budget for it and make sure we get a budget for, understand what it would cost and budget for it. And that might be potentially part of consideration for the master plan, and that's not till 2026. So,
Which would fall right into that.
and it could fall right into
If we decide
that.
what we want to do next year,
Yeah.
budget it for the 26th meeting.
Is that a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
So now we report back to Julie that we did not just ignore it. We did actually talk about it. And it'll be in the minutes. We have a plan.
And that gets to the
The plan
point.
is just to fix it, not what's
We
going
do
on
have to
with it.
set a budget. And so I would like to push back our budget to a more appropriate $3,000 amount for next year. And I would like to offer that out for either, we can discuss it on our next meeting if you like, or we can vote about it now, or just leave it as a kind of open switch and then talk about it in December. Because we don't need to get it in till January.
Okay. I said, to me, it's,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much if we do a marker, 3,000 will cover it. But if we actually wanted to do something next year with a consultant, we don't have a clue what it would cost.
We have no idea.
So do we just do it with a marker for next year and then look for pricing for 2026 to do it the official way? 'Cause there's no way we can come up with a budget between now and January of what it would cost.
Do we have money for printing in there?
Yeah, we don't spend very much money. The monies we spend are, for example, if we have new alternates and they want to attend a training session where it costs us money to send an alternate to that training session, it's budgeted.
That was a hint.
I think you'd be the first to go to a training session.
No, I went to it.
No push, but if
They're very informative. Go to them.
printing these things up costs money. We print those up. Each year we get a copy of these little
This book?
booklets for plant that cost us some ridiculously small amount if we buy them in advance.
well, for the past 3 years, we've, put $10,000 and we don't use any of it.
And we use a very small, and plus we end up paying money for somebody to do the minutes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is $3,000 is a
Is-
lot more conservative than the 10,000.
Yes, well, that's where I'm coming.
Yes,
But we
yes.
don't get billed for consultancy time with our council, right?
No, and that's a great point. And they don't reallocate it back to us, but, yeah, so no. Which is why we have to ask the select board for use of that council before doing so, in order to make sure that we don't go running off the rails.
And it's to make sure that there's 3 different departments asking the same question.
Right.
You think?
I believe that's part of it.
Yeah.
We've had this discussion.
Yeah, the only place where I could see that being a problem is if we have a problem with the select board and we need to talk to the council because we have a problem with the select board. And that would be the only issue where you'd have a conflict and say, well, no, of course you can't talk to the attorney about us.
I think in years past, there have been some issues that it sort of became a conversation, an ongoing conversation with the attorney, with multiple members of multiple boards all participating. It wasn't that there was a conflict between the boards. It was just an issue that encompassed multiple boards, and everybody kept chiming in, but we kind of went around the same point a couple of times and all of that.
I think we've done a pretty good job of it in the last bunch of years. We kept ourselves out of hot water, mostly.
Okay, so,
I hear a motion. I saw a motion, I heard it.
I saw a motion. I'd make a motion that we go home.
I said approval, second. Second?
yep, Bob did.
All right, all approved? Aye?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. This is how we go.
But check with Julie, because
Okay.
there are trainings, they're down in Concord, and the one I went to was a weekend. It was a Saturday, it was an all-day Saturday thing.
Some of them are free.
Then do you
Some
go
of
to
them-
one of the OEM conferences?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. I don't really think of those as training
I
sessions.
know, really?
I mean, there's a lot of information there.
Tons of information, all those workshops that you go to. And I went to one that was really basic in the sense that it taught me how to read the maps.
Yeah.
How to read,
I think if we had had an
I'm glad you
uneven
finished that because they taught me how to read.
I
No,
know.
it was all the maps, you know, like when they come in with the site plans and elevations and all of this and where the water is, and all those lines, what they mean.
Yeah.
but it's
It
just.
was great, I mean, they
I think
literally
so.
walked through,
Yeah.
and for me it was basic, because I'd never seen one of those things.
Yeah, I don't know, I should ask Frank if there was another member,
But other than that, I mean, it was a great workshop, and I don't know how often.
Well,
they do that.
the OEM one,
I mean, it's pushing an issue.
it doesn't matter whether you're an
Yeah.
alternate or,
Yeah.
first
And in
Saturday.
fact, I could.
But Betsy, it was the one that suggested I go to that. She goes, it's a great introduction. You get to meet other people
Oh, I
who
know.
are planning boards, and, you know,
After
it
they
was
get
interesting, it was like the same shit that I'm hearing here.
Okay.
In Massachusetts
But
and in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So
So did you read the planning board?
I understand.
That's right. There was a
They're just retired.
Littleton.
in
that
today's
day
Sunday
is
Sunday, we're showing what the planning board for Conway had to do tonight. So
You're a master electrician.
yeah, ours is nothing compared
And
to
everyone's
shit.
trying to get me to put up a
Oh
shingle
my
here,
God.
and I just,
The rebuild, they're looking at
but
the
in like
plannings for the
27 years,
new
it's
Red Jacket. The revised plans and getting called, now it's called Birch.
License or whatever, but
They said that was the original name. Before it was the Red
electricians
Jacket.
here
That was what it
are
was originally
like
called, Birchmore.
like gold. I mean,
But
you know,
He's building,
Tim
he's
DePietro
he's
lives on
gonna build
Carte-Notch,
exactly what was
is-
there.
Is one of the
So he's gonna
primary
build that section and he's gonna do
contractors
some,
in
some of the north
locally.
side's got smoke damage.
If you want to work with Tim, you say,
So
Tim, I need
That's why they've
a,
never.
I need a
built it.
fixture installed.
So he's gonna do that. He is moving the
I'm
town homes,
scheduling,
reducing
getting the
them,
call in July,
but he's
I'm
moving into the-
scheduling now for
which is what
November.
the town suggested, so he's gonna move that. But they're meeting on
I
that,
know, it's.
library,
As if you
parking,
don't believe how many
some
people have said,
subdivision.
please, just.
Yeah, it's like, they had a shitload of stuff.
And
That
either
was
you
like-
would
And every one of
put
the
out a
farm
shingle, you
complex
just.
and
Oh,
everything.
my
Yeah.
Word of mouth, yes.
Yeah, at that and plumbers,
'cause I know-
it's like.
You know, when we talk about
We
making
had
all
a,
about
the town
turn this
needed
off.
to be installed.